Well, I have the best story in the world. It's true, I do. I always say it was divine intervention. I moved to LA in April of 1986. I had a boyfriend who was he was from Tennessee originally, but he was living in LA when I met him. He was in Nashville doing some music videos, and I went out just to see what was going on and out there, music videos, and was going to work with him as his assistant. And I got to LA on a Sunday, and on Monday I went to the production company where he worked, and that's where I met Fincher. Oh. Yeah, he was a 22-year-old filmmaker. I was 27 when I moved to LA, and it was a little company, and there were two producers. Steve Golan, who's passed away, very, very prolific producer, was one of the producers there. Icelandic guy named Yanni Stigvatsen, and 4 directors. And so I walked right into that. David and I got to know each other, and I worked as a PA on, different jobs. And then I started working. I was the very first assistant David ever had. And then from there, I started doing his casting. We did music videos, then we moved into commercials. And then Dave went to England to do Alien 3. And I didn't want to move to England at that point. I had just moved to LA, and my son was young, and I wasn't going to drag him to England and leave him with babysitters all the time because, you're going to work long, long, long hours. And so at that point, Dave was like, well, I'll be back, and we're always going to work together, and you should start your own commercial casting company. So I did. And then he asked me to come and work on Seven, and he asked me to work on The Game, and I was, I had a boyfriend in Santa Fe at that time, and I wanted to, run around Santa Fe on horses, and say, no, I don't know if I want to come back to LA right now. And then he did Fight Club, and he was like, I need you to come back to LA, and I need you to cast this movie. I was like, okay, I will. I was like, okay, I will, but I'm scared to death. I'm so scared. So yeah, that's how it happened. Yeah, we've been together. We've been working together now 39 years. Yeah. I'm very selective about what I do. So I usually do one project at a time. I'll do a couple of projects a year. I've always worked like that. I feel like, for me, casting is an art, and now there have been times where I did a lot of projects at once when I was doing a lot of TV. I did all the Marvel TV for Netflix. And, we had a lot of projects going on at a time, but it's not my favorite way to work, That was fun. I enjoyed it. I did, Julie Schubert and I were partners during that time, and we did all that stuff together. It was a lot of fun, but it's not my forte. My forte is one thing at a time. And, particularly if they're really big movies, and when I'm working with David, and there's such an onslaught of people coming at you that want to be involved in what you're doing, which is great. I couldn't manage more than that, and I don't want to. I think improv's amazing. It scares the shit out of me. I don't know how people do it. I'd be like, because they said something about, you want to do some improv exercise? I was like, I do not. I don't want any fucking part of improv. I don't know. That stuff really scares me. But, it's an art. And people that can really do that is incredible. And it's very important. But I also work with such prolific writers. I'm like, just say the words. It's so easy. Just say those words right there. And it's important that you know those words. And then if there's room to, add on to, or you need to do something else. But if you got a 3-line scene, don't improv. Because at the end of the day, if you get that job, you're going to say those 3 lines. That's all you're going to say. And that's all but I think it's an amazing skill, an amazing art. But I was like, I don't know how people do that. Is there a shelf life? Yes, there is. Let's be real clear. Is there a shelf life on being a rock star? Well, yeah, there is. Is there a shelf life on being a model? Yeah, there is to a certain extent. Is there? But there are actors that are in their 80s that are prolific and work, character actors and movie stars that are working. But if you're not really working a lot and you're in your mid-30s, you're probably not going to be a movie star by the time you're 40. I mean, it's just, unless there's that strike of lightning somewhere that happens. But that's would be in any profession. That would be in any profession. Because it's like you're building on it all the time. But everybody has a different trajectory. Some people might start later, and all of a sudden they're working like crazy. But that's a smaller amount of people that are doing that, I wouldn't suggest to somebody who's 50 years old, who's the CEO of a company and has a well-established lifestyle, to bail out of that and go start acting, unless they have enough money to support themselves and their lifestyle. Because how many roles are there going to be for you to audition for? Out of those roles, how many are you going to get? And what's the size of the roles, and what kind of rate do you make for those roles? So, it's that kind of practical stuff that I would hope people would think about. But, I think anything's possible. But it's like I said earlier, I think at a certain point in people's lives, it's good to assess if your life is being fortified by whatever it is, your work, your relationship, your habits, your whatever. And if it is, then you keep going. And if it's not, you rethink it. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a long haul. And, it's, and there's no rhyme or reason sometimes why certain things happen for some people and they don't happen for other people. I don't know what that is. I can tell you that casting directors don't hold the magic key for it. We just don't. A lot of that is life. It's destiny, that is beyond all of us. All I can say is everybody just do the best that you can, work as hard as you can, and assess as you go along how it all fortifies you. To learn the text, not to overthink it. Not try to, if you've got a 2-page scene, you don't need to know where this person was born and raised and why they're there. I mean, it's like, come on, guys. Some people try to make more out of it because then it makes them look like they're more serious or what they do or something. I don't know, but not to overthink it. Because that's the other thing. If you start to overthink it, then you become very attached to something you want to do. And sometimes what you want to do is not right. It's not the right direction, And so that's why you need to be open to taking notes and moving around and having some fluidity as to what you're doing in your scene. But also don't come in a room making excuses or saying, I'm so sorry, and also don't tell me your life story in the first, I don't want to know, I'm really happy to see you, and I'm sorry if there's something going on in your life, I'm sorry if you had a busy morning, I probably did too, but, you just come in, you're not going to be my best friend, chances are we're not going to do Christmas together. But maybe we will, I don't know. But we're, you're in a friendly place. You're already in a friendly place. Because I want somebody to get the job. That's what I want. I want you to succeed. And I want you to succeed even if you don't get the job, which I know is disappointing, but I want you to succeed in the fact that you've had a good experience and that when you leave the room or you send me your tape or we get off of a Zoom, you're like, okay, I'm cool with that. I did the best I could do and, go with God. We'll see where it goes from here. And that's what I want for everybody. And just because you don't get this job doesn't mean you might not get another job somewhere down the line. And a lot of times you do, because, our job is to help you. And you're not disposable to us. You don't come in this just one time and then, we're like, I'm done with that. We don't. We remember, we go, hey, like, remember that casting we did like 4 years ago? You remember that girl that had, sometimes I can't remember the names, but I can go, but she had this on and she did this and she did that. And then of course the girls that work with me are younger, so they can remember. And they're like, oh yeah, that was so-and-so from somewhere. You go, oh, you remember that guy? And I think he was from like Buffalo, New York, and he did this, and you remember? And they're like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. And so we'll go find you, as broad as we need to. The chances are good because you're putting yourself in the position to be able to do that. But you just have to think about how many projects there are and how many roles are there for whoever you are. In America, there's probably not a lot of French roles in scripts. Just like in France, there's not a lot of American roles in scripts. It's just like that's how it goes. But it's not impossible, for sure. There's not anything impossible about it. It's just a matter of, it's always, to me, it's like that perfect conversion of time, place, project, role, your availability. That was like, I used to do tons and tons and tons of general meetings. And I enjoyed it. Of course I do. And I still get lots of requests for them, as you can imagine. And I don't do them as much anymore. One, because it's, it's an hour out of your day, usually. And also, in all of the years of all of the people I've done general meetings for, I've not ever cast any of them in anything. And it's not because I didn't love them. I've tried a few times, but they weren't available, or the dates didn't work out, or we got pushed, or something like that. But it's not because I didn't love them and think they were great. It's just I've not had a role for them, or not had a role that when I had it were they available for. So I don't do it. And people, the agents and managers are always like, oh, but you're going to love them. I was like, I fucking love actors, or I wouldn't do what I do. Of course I'm going to love them. But just because I love somebody don't mean I got a job for them, So, it's not impossible. That's for sure. We have a lot of celebrities, influencers. So people that basically become very famous and very rich doing shit, in my opinion. But good for them. That's all cool. I'm cool with that. But that does not make you an actor. It doesn't make you an actor at all. It doesn't make you a musician. It doesn't make you a painter. It doesn't make you a baker. It makes you a internet celebrity, or a marketing genius, or whatever it is, and that's all cool. But because we have so much of that in America, and we have all these reality shows, it makes people think, oh, well, I'm kind of cute. I can probably do that. Or I live next door to so-and-so, and they think I'm cute. And so there's not such a seriousness about it, especially about studying. And that is something that's different. It's, here I could tell everybody's very serious. UK, clearly, Canada, Australia. There are a lot of actors in America that are very serious about what they do, and they're very successful, and they still study all the time. But there's a wide variety of people that don't. They're like, I don't need that. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, good for you. If you can't actually do a job, there's no point in submitting you or having somebody take. I mean, I've had those kinds of things happen in the past. And then you're like, oh, sorry, well, that's not going to work. And you're like, well, why do we go through all of this? That's why I am diligent. My office is diligent from day one. What's your availability? Do you have options on other things? If you're not American, do you have a green card? What kind of green card? If you have a visa, what kind of visa? When does it expire? Send me pictures of it, because it doesn't do me any good. to go through all that process and particularly show you to a director only to find out that, I mean, what good is that for anybody? Yeah, but also, the agents and managers, their job is to find people to rep and to get work for. So they're always looking. And a lot of the American agents are interacting with the French agents or the Dutch agents or the UK agents or the Japanese agents, and there's a lot of crossover. But again, it's, it's just the convergence of you being available and the role being there that you're perfect for. You also, have to work on your accent. Even though, very much you could be in an American movie with a French accent, but you have to make sure that it's clear enough that, we can, unless, of course, the role calls for someone with a super heavy accent and there's something really sweet, about that. But, that's definitely something that anybody, I mean, if somebody's Southern, they have to work on that. If somebody has a really heavy-duty Brooklyn accent, everybody has to work on those kinds of things. Depends. I have done some jobs that shoot there. And I've also done some jobs that just part of a movie might film there. And then, of course, I am looking for actors that live there when we do that. Filmmakers that I work with, I'm very fortunate. They're very supportive. And they want me to send them what I think is best for the role. Because, as David says, what do I need you for if you're not going to do that? A long time ago, he's like, what? No. What? Why are you showing me that? So I'm very fortunate in that I have a lot of trust and a lot of encouragement and, more confidence as the years went on because things worked out pretty good most of the time, But it just, it's just who's best for the role. Things that people do that are no-goes.
Like big no-nos,
Well, bad light and bad sound.
Okay.
Those are big no-nos.
Okay.
Those are your two big no-nos. And also, don't film yourself standing across the room where you're like that big in the frame. I'm like, I can't see, this is what I'm looking for. You need to do a slate. We always want to slate your name, where you live, if you have a visa or a green card, if you don't live in the States, and then a full body shot. And then I like things here. I am not a stickler for, I don't need the blue background or a white background. I love it when people, tape in their own homes, or they tape outside, or they tape at the beach. I love that. I don't need it a certain way. I don't need you to go into a studio and spend money. I don't need any of that. I want you to do it at home. If you're reading with somebody over Zoom, you got your friend, you got your kids. Sometimes people's kids read with them. Sometimes their housekeeper reads with them. Sometimes, I don't know, it's the guy next door. It's like, and I really enjoy that because it tells me a lot about who you are and what you're thinking about. And I like, I like seeing somebody in their house and the pictures on the wall behind them, or, sometimes the dog comes walking in, or, or a kid's like, hey, or, or their somebody's boyfriend or girlfriend, I might know, and I'm reading their partner, and all of a sudden somebody's face will come in, and you're like, oh my God, this is great. So I enjoy that. I personally enjoy it a lot. I know a lot of people are very uptight about their stuff like that, but I'm not. And the production value on my self-tapes is terrible. Nobody would believe it. David's so patient with me because he's so precise and pristine and everything's perfect. My self-tapes look like my 4-year-old niece does them. I'm like everything, but it's just it's very low production value when I take people. But but I get what I need, I get what's happening here, and that is something that's changed in the SAG rules, which I am very supportive of. You don't have to go to a studio. We cannot tell you. I mean, I didn't do any of this stuff anyway, but I can't tell you you have to have this, or it has to be on a certain type of camera, or any, people can't do that anymore, which I think is great. I support that 100%. But I was never like that to start out with. I can't do anything with it but show it to my filmmaker.
Right.
Or producers, if it's, TV, the producers look at things, movies, films, the directors look at things. And I'm very, very, very clear that the self-tapes only come to me by the way we request them. Mm-hmm. And like sometimes people don't read those directions, not actors always. It's always the agent or managers, and this relentless on certain ones that never fucking do it right. Never. But they'll put it on Vimeo or other sites like that, password protected, and like, take that shit down. Right. Get it off of there. Even password protected, this stuff is private. So I'm very, very, very precise about that. And then sometimes we'll do we're going to do what we need to do to get it, but, a couple of takes is nice. But I think you should send me what you think is the best. And also, if I get a self-tape and it's not right, but I see something there that I think is really on point, I will call the agent and go, this one's not working. Like, this is what I need. Let's do this. Here's some more direction. Or I'll get on a Zoom with you and say, look, this is not what I'm looking for. This is what I need you to do. Or I'll do a Zoom audition. But yeah, if I don't get what I need on the self-tape, I will ask for more. Well, but you can't spend your life trying to geographically position yourself perfectly. Right. You just can't. And part of being an actor is making decisions. You have to make a decision about where you're going to be, and how you want to be. And you have to make a commitment to that, and you have to write it out. Now, I do believe, because I've been doing this a very long time, that there comes a time that people should really assess if this is what they should be doing. When you get to be of a certain age, if you're looking for certain things more in your life, and you're not really able to support yourself as an actor or a painter or musician or whatever it is that you dream to do, you should reassess whether that's going to be your profession or if that's going to be a hobby for you. That I do, because I do believe that. Because it's not going to work out for everybody. Just like anything else does. It doesn't always work out. But it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that's not really your path. And maybe your path is something that's even better and even more. But you just have to open up to it. Yeah, if that's what you want to do to sustain your life, and you have a certain life, that's the secret. Are you booking enough work to keep yourself satisfied creatively, to keep yourself happy, to keep yourself secure, which is with a roof over your head and groceries and enough to get to the job and back, and those kinds of things, because that part of life is really important, and it's something I do think at a certain point people need to look at,